Hi, welcome to our channel where we share the most intriguing stories. When my father died, I inherited 150 acres of stubborn Texas soil and a war I never saw coming. They came with offers, then threats, then bulldozers. But this land has roots deeper than concrete, and I wasn't about to let some HOA queen pave over my family's legacy. Let the battle begin. I hadn't planned on coming back to the farm this soon, at least not to stay. But after Dad passed, and I stood in that dusty probate office holding the deed with my name now etched on it, there was no question where I belonged. Coalfield Acres wasn't just land. It was breath and bone, soaked in the sweat of generations. 150 acres of pasture, vineyard, pond, and stubborn tradition, nestled just outside the creeping edge of Johnson County's newest development cancer, Clear Sky Estates. I moved back in the spring. The air was thick with mesquite pollen and the kind of silence I hadn't felt in Austin since before the tech boom. Out here, you could hear your own heartbeat and your neighbor's tractor, sometimes in the same rhythm. I traded my dual monitors and polished loafers for a pair of steel-toe boots and 100 reasons to get up with the sun. Mending fences, reseeding the south pasture, fixing the pump out by the pond, breathing free. Then, about 3 weeks in, I got a knock on my door from a woman who looked like she had Botox where her compassion should be. Mid-50s, tan lines from tennis bracelets, crisp blouse buttoned up like a defense mechanism. "Mr. Coalfield?" she asked, eyes already scanning the porch like she was appraising it for demolition. "That's me," I said, wiping grease off my hands with a rag. She didn't shake my hand. "Karen Criswell, president of the Clear Sky Estates Homeowners Association." I already didn't like her. She handed me a folder thicker than a steak menu and smiled like someone trying to sell a coffin pre-dug. "I represent the board of Clear Sky Estates. We're currently in Phase 3 of expansion. I'm here on behalf of our developer partners to offer you a generous proposal for your property." I opened the folder. It was printed on thick, expensive paper, the kind that screams lawsuits and insincerity. The offer? $500,000 for 150 acres of family land that hadn't seen a mortgage since Eisenhower. She even included renderings, golf courses, wellness spas, something called a Zen garden amphitheater. "This is an incredible opportunity," she added, like she was blessing me with salvation. "We could incorporate your house as a leasing office, or convert it into a wellness retreat." I stared at her, then at the folder, then back at her. "No," I said. Karen blinked. She clearly hadn't expected that. "Excuse me." I said no. "This isn't just land. It's my home. My family's been here since 1943. We're not interested." Her smile stayed, but her pupils dilated just enough for me to notice. "Well," she said slowly, "you may want to reconsider. I understand it's a lot of upkeep. This place is a bit out of date. With some effort and a lot of money, it might be made livable again. You should take the offer seriously." I stepped off the porch, folded the folder, and handed it back. "I'm not selling," I said again. "Not now." Not ever. Karen accepted it with a huff and turned on her heel. "Then I suppose we'll have to proceed through other channels." She got into her Lexus and peeled out like she thought the gravel might stain her tires. 2 days later, I received a formal letter from the county environmental office citing 3 supposed violations on the property: water runoff into adjacent parcels, illegal burning of brush, and chemical storage near the well house. All of it nonsense. I hadn't even touched the barrels behind the barn since I came back. I called the inspector listed on the notice. Voicemail. I called again the next day. Nothing. So I drove down to the office myself. The guy at the desk looked confused when I handed over the notice. "This shouldn't have gone out," he said, scratching his head. "No inspection has been logged for your property in over a year." I asked who signed it. He pointed to a name, an unfamiliar one. Later that evening, I went to check the barn and found the padlock broken, the hasp bent like someone had pried it open with a crowbar. Inside, nothing was missing, but someone had clearly gone through my tools. A pair of bolt cutters had been moved, and my irrigation maps were unfolded on the bench. That was the moment it stopped being petty harassment and started feeling like war, but the cherry on top came the next morning. I was walking the perimeter of the east pasture, just past the vine rows, when I saw them. 6 metal signs staked into the ground like boundary markers. Private property, HOA oversight zone. Trespassers will be prosecuted, black lettering. Clear Sky logo in the corner, glossy finish. I hadn't put those up. I yanked every single one of them out of the dirt and tossed them into the bed of my truck. Then I drove straight to the sheriff's office and filed a report. Trespass, vandalism, fraud. I brought the signs as evidence. The deputy, a barrel-chested man named Harlan I remembered from high school, gave me a long look over his paperwork. "Clear sky, huh?" he said, flipping through the complaint. "They've been busy lately." "Busy trying to steal land," I muttered. "Wouldn't be the first time." I asked him what he meant, but he just shrugged and said, "We'll look into it." Later that week, my mailbox started filling with glossy flyers from the HOA, addressed to residents of the future Clear Sky District. They included maps with my farm marked as Phase 4 development and an invitation to a neighborhood vote to welcome new land into the community. It wasn't a negotiation. It was a blueprint for conquest, and I was the last hill they hadn't paved over yet. When the HOA flyers started showing up in my mailbox, I thought it was a sick joke. But by the third one, with my damn vineyard photoshopped into a community tennis complex, I realized they were serious. Phase 4 expansion, they called it, like my family's land was just a spreadsheet cell waiting to be merged. According to them, I was now part of an unofficial transitional buffer zone. According to every county record in existence, I was a private landowner not under HOA jurisdiction and not planning to be. But the pressure didn't stop. It escalated. First came the door-to-door HOA volunteers, smiling residents with clipboards, knocking like missionaries. They handed out community vision packets and asked if I'd consider a friendly annexation. I told them the only thing I was annexing was a new roll of barbed wire for my fence. Then came the letters. Dozens of them. Some were printed on official HOA letterhead, others handwritten. One neighbor wrote, "Please don't make this harder than it needs to be. The board has everyone's best interest at heart." Another said, "Your land is better suited for public use." We all agree we. Who the hell was we? The kicker was a certified envelope from a law firm representing Clear Sky Estates. Inside was a multi-page request for voluntary relinquishment of parcel. It claimed I was in violation of a fictitious development continuity clause, citing a real estate statute that didn't even apply to unincorporated county land. At the bottom, in gold ink, was a buyout incentive of $525,000, $25,000 more than before, a bribe dressed like a bonus. I didn't sign it. I didn't even reply. I burned it in the fire pit next to the vineyard with a shot of Jack and a scowl. A week later, I got wind of an HOA meeting scheduled at the Clear Sky Community Hall. Flyers posted on utility poles near my gate urged residents to attend and vote in favor of community integration for enhanced public utility. There was even a map showing a redesigned Clear Sky boundary, with my entire property shaded in blue, like I was already part of their little spa utopia. I didn't plan to attend, but something changed that afternoon. A neighbor, retired contractor named Bill, dropped by with a six-pack and a whisper. "They're planning to make it public tonight," he said, glancing over his shoulder like the trees had ears. "Karen's pushing for a vote of support. No legal teeth, but public pressure. You might want to be there." So I cleaned the dirt off my boots, changed into a clean flannel, and drove my dusty Ford straight into the belly of the beast. The Clear Sky Community Hall looked like a country club that had overdosed on beige. Fake granite counters, those pointless indoor ferns, and a wall-mounted HOA mission statement engraved in brass. The place smelled like lavender hand sanitizer and smugness. I walked in and heads turned like I was a bison that had wandered into a Whole Foods. Karen stood at the front of the hall holding a mic with both hands like she was addressing Congress. Her blonde bob looked sharper than her politics, and her pastel pantsuit matched the drapes. Behind her was a projector screen displaying my land with a new label in bold white text, "Future Development, Coalfield Civic Zone." I didn't even have a seat before she opened her mouth. "Before we begin tonight's vote," she announced, "I'd like to address a matter of community concern. As you all know, we've worked tirelessly to build something beautiful here, a modern, united neighborhood with shared values. But we are currently divided by one stubborn parcel of outdated farmland." Gasps, murmurs. A few people looked back at me. Karen smiled. "The board has extended multiple generous offers to the current resident, all of which have been ignored or rejected. So tonight, we are here to take action. A vote to support formal absorption of Coalfield acres into the Clear Sky community." That's when I stood up. Karen didn't flinch. "Ah, mister, Coalfield. Would you like to make a statement? I stepped forward and pulled my phone out of my pocket. Actually, I'd like to record yours. Her eyes flickered. This is a public meeting, I added, tapping the record button. Under Texas law, I have the right. Karen straightened her back. Of course. We have nothing to hide. I walked up beside her and turned to the crowd. Folks, this land has been in my family for over 80 years. We've raised crops, cattle, kids. We've buried dogs under those pecan trees. We've fought drought and fire and debt, but we never fought our neighbors. Not until now. A silence hung in the air. I don't belong to your HOA. I don't want your tennis courts. I don't need your bylaws or your vision boards or your yoga decks. What I need is for you to leave my land the hell alone. Karen interrupted, her voice cool and sugar-coated. No one's trying to take anything. We're simply offering a partnership. Is that what you call putting up fake signs and sending in bulldozers? I snapped. That rattled her. Karen's voice sharpened. You're being irrational. You're clinging to the past. You can't hold back progress because of nostalgia. I nodded slowly. Then I leaned toward the mic. You're right. I can't hold back progress, but I can damn well keep it off my porch. Applause broke out. Not loud, but enough to break the room's spell. Karen stepped away, fuming. As I turned to walk out, she reached for my phone, tried to swat it out of my hand. The suddenness shocked me, but I held firm. I looked her dead in the eyes and said, You won't buy history, and you sure as hell won't steal it. This land is Coalfield land. You want it? Bring everything you've got. But don't expect us to roll over. I walked out with my boots echoing on their polished tile floor, knowing I'd just painted a bullseye on my back. It started with the rumble. You know the kind. Heavy diesel, deep growl, the kind of sound you don't ignore when it's coming from your own backyard. I was tightening irrigation lines down by the south edge of the vineyard when the low thrum drifted in from the pond area. At first, I thought it might be county maintenance. Maybe a road crew got lost. But the closer I got, the more that noise started to feel personal. When I cleared the ridge, I saw it. A yellow backhoe, already halfway through, carving a trench along the west bank of my pond. Two men in neon vests and hard hats stood beside a white pickup with a Clear Sky Estates logo on the door. One of them was pointing toward the vineyard. The other was smoking like it was just another Tuesday. I shouted before I even reached them. Hey, what the hell are you doing? The smoker turned slowly, exhaled, and said, Easement work. Water diversion channel. We're stabilizing runoff on whose authority? He reached into the cab and pulled out a crumpled piece of paper like a magician producing a rabbit. Work order, issued by the HOA. I took it. It looked official enough. Watermarks, logo, paragraph of legalese. Except it was completely meaningless, like waving a Burger King coupon at a steakhouse. No county seals, no signatures from anyone with actual jurisdiction. Just HOA jargon stamped with Karen's name at the bottom like a monarch's edict. This land is not part of your HOA, I said slowly, folding the paper in half. That means your orders don't mean shit. Sir, the smoker said, clearly trying to look bored, we're just following instructions. You'll need to take it up with the board. I took a step closer. Here's what you're going to do. You're going to shut that machine off, pack your crap, and get the hell off my land before I call the sheriff and report you for trespassing and environmental vandalism. You can't talk to us like that. I can. And I just did. He opened his mouth again, but that's when I pulled out my phone and started recording. The look on his face shifted. He muttered something under his breath and waved at the backhoe driver to kill the engine. 10 minutes later, they were gone. But the damage was done. They'd already chewed through 6 feet of my pond bank, torn up a cattail marsh that had been growing undisturbed for decades, and knocked over 2 fence posts. I documented everything, time-stamped photos, videos, aerial map overlays. Then I called Deputy Harlan again. He came out that afternoon with a younger deputy in tow. Took notes, took pictures, nodded a lot. This the first time they've done this kind of thing? No, I said. It's the first time they brought heavy equipment, but it's not the first time they've stepped over the line. Harlan looked up from his notepad. You planning to press charges? I thought about it. I should have said yes right then, but some part of me still clung to the idea that this could be stopped short of war. Not yet, I said, but next time I won't be so patient. Harlan nodded like he knew what was coming. It was 2 days later when the drone showed up. At first, it hovered high, well above the roofline, circling lazily like a buzzard that smelled drama. But then it dropped. Low. Too low. I was out near the barn when I saw it glide past the vineyard, dipping just 20 feet above the ground, sweeping left to right like it was scanning for weak spots. I followed it with my eyes, then watched it turn hard and sweep back toward the house. I'd had enough. I went inside, grabbed Dad's old Remington 870, and stepped back out. I waited for the drone to dip again, and when it did, close, real close, I fired once. Boom! Plastic and circuitry scattered across the gravel like oversized confetti. Within the hour, I got a phone call from a number I didn't recognize. A smooth voice introduced himself as Brady Criswell, attorney and concerned parent. I didn't need to ask. He was Karen's son. "You destroyed private property," he said calmly. "That drone was licensed and fully legal." "No," I said. "It was operating below FAA minimum altitude and filming private land without consent. I've already filed a report. You'll be hearing from our legal team." "Good," I said. "Maybe they can teach you how to fly a drone legally." The next morning, a uniformed deputy handed me a court summons. Clear Sky Estates was suing me for destruction of property, malicious intent, and endangering community surveillance operations. I almost laughed at that last part. I called up my family's lawyer, a bulldog named Denise Langley, who looked like someone's grandma and argued like someone's assassin. "Bring everything," she said. "I'll bring fire." We filed a countersuit that same day, violation of FAA regulations, unauthorized surveillance, privacy invasion, and trespassing. Denise brought in a certified drone forensics analyst who examined the debris and confirmed the flight altitude was well below 50 feet, clear FAA violation. In the preliminary hearing, the judge didn't even let the HOA attorney finish his opening statement before cutting in. "This case shouldn't be in my courtroom," the judge said. "This is an HOA throwing rocks at a hornet's nest. Dismissed." With prejudice, Karen's son turned red. Karen wasn't in court, but I imagined she was watching somewhere, biting a perfectly manicured nail. As we walked out, Denise looked at me and smiled. "That's one drone down. Want to go for the mothership next?" I looked over the courthouse lawn, wide and quiet, and for a moment, I didn't answer. Then I said, "Yeah, let's go for the mothership. I hadn't planned on calling Grandpa. Not yet anyway." Not because I didn't want to, but because I knew exactly what would happen once I did. Henry Coalfield wasn't just my grandfather. He was a force of nature. Korean War vet, retired district judge, lifelong rancher, and the kind of man who once scared a county commissioner into backing out of a pipeline deal with nothing but a stare and a copy of the Texas Constitution. He'd fought HOA overreach once back in the 80s and won, but I wasn't ready to hand him this mess until it got truly ugly. Well, it got ugly. 3 nights after the drone trial, I found my well house door wide open. Someone had clipped the chain lock and left the valve slightly twisted. Nothing catastrophic, just enough to leak a few hundred gallons before sunrise. And they left a flyer on the door frame. Another Clear Sky notice. "We're still open to negotiations." That was it. That was the moment I picked up the phone. He answered on the first ring, like he'd been waiting for this call. "I was wondering when you'd stop playing nice," Grandpa said, voice like dry gravel and Texas whiskey. By the next morning, he was on my porch with a dusty briefcase, a Stetson hat, and the same brown coat he wore to my dad's funeral. He didn't hug. He didn't shake hands. He just nodded, surveyed the damage, and said, "We've got work to do." We spent that afternoon in the study, going through everything. Letters, maps, fake violations, the drone wreckage, even soil samples from the pond bank. He moved methodically, like a prosecutor building a murder case. Finally, from the bottom of his case, he pulled out a yellowed manila folder with curled edges. He opened it and laid out a document stamped in blue ink. County Charter Exemption Agreement, 1969. "There it is," he muttered, "right where I left it." I leaned over the document. In neat cursive and typewritten lines, it stated that Coalfield Acres was permanently exempt from any future HOA or municipal incorporation under the Johnson County Rural Preservation Initiative. It had been signed by the county judge, the district assessor, and my great-grandfather with full legal standing. "This paper," Grandpa said, tapping it with his index finger, "is more powerful than any bulldozer, drone, or pampered lawyer with slicked-back hair." He looked up at me. "You're not fighting a legal battle, Jeremy. You're fighting people who don't understand what land means. They think boundaries are made of fences and surveys. Ours are made of blood and time." He paused. "Let's remind them." The next HOA meeting was set for Thursday night. Grandpa insisted on attending in person. I drove him into the heart of HOA territory in my beat-up Ford. He climbed out slow, spine stiff, but unbroken, and walked into the Clear Sky Community Hall like it was his damn courthouse. Karen was already at the podium, smiling like a python about to give a TED Talk. She didn't notice us at first. The room was full. Residents, volunteers, probably a few real estate agents hoping for scraps. On the projection screen behind Karen was another revised plan. Clear Sky Phase 4, Integration Civic Pathway Approval Vote. Grandpa leaned over to me. What in the hell is a civic pathway? I think it means bulldozing the barn. Karen was halfway through a rehearsed speech when she spotted us. Her eyes narrowed. She tried to recover with a polite smile. "Mr. Coalfield," she said into the mic, "how lovely of you to join us." And, "This must be your father?" Grandpa stepped forward without being invited, adjusted his Stetson, and said calmly, "Name's Henry Coalfield. I was defending this land before you were voting on HOA bylaws." A few chuckles rippled through the room. Karen kept smiling. "This is a community meeting, sir. Perhaps you'd like to schedule time to address the board formally." He pulled out the old exemption agreement and held it up like a warrant. "This here," he said, loud and clear, "is a recorded, notarized, and court-certified document signed by Judge Daniel Webb in 1969. It states, in no uncertain terms, that Coalfield Acres is, quote, permanently exempt from all HOA jurisdiction under county charter provisions. That includes Clear Sky, Clear Skies, or whatever damn marketing name you slap on your suburban sprawl." Karen stepped forward, still smiling, but now her teeth were clenched. "That agreement is outdated. The county has changed. Development standards have evolved. And the law still applies," Grandpa snapped, cutting her off. "This was never subject to revocation. It predates your bylaws by 30 years. She tried again. "Even so, surely we can find common ground." "You don't own the ground," Grandpa said. "That's the point." Karen opened her mouth again, but he raised his hand. "I suggest," he said, "you read the fine print before you try stealing land with a spreadsheet and a smile. And if you so much as touch that vineyard again, I'll have you in court faster than your luxury SUV can clear the roundabout." Dead silence. Grandpa turned and walked back to his seat. Karen's face had gone pale, but she recovered just enough to stammer, "We will review the documentation and respond through the proper channels." The rest of the meeting fizzled. Nobody wanted to talk spa plans or welcome packets after the old judge had dropped the hammer. When we left, I saw Karen outside, pacing and whispering into her phone with the kind of urgency that only comes from panic. Good. That night, back on the porch, Grandpa poured us both a drink. "When people forget what land means," he said, "you remind them. Not with fists, not with fire, with fact, paper, proof." He raised his glass. "But if they keep pushing," he added, "then we bring the fire too." I thought Karen would back off after the showdown at the community hall. Thought maybe she'd retreat into her HOA cave and lick her wounds. I should have known better. People like her don't stop when they're proven wrong. They escalate. 3 days after Grandpa dropped the exemption bomb, a construction crew rolled onto my property like they owned it. 2 white trucks, unmarked, but with flashing hazard lights and orange cones like they were on some official mission. They parked right by the pond and started unloading PVC piping, shovels, and what looked suspiciously like trenching tools. I walked up, calm as I could manage, and asked the man in the hard hat what in hell they thought they were doing. "Installing preliminary water channeling," he said, not even looking at me. "We've got a directive from Clear Sky to begin drainage realignment for upcoming landscaping." I blinked. "This is private land." He pulled a laminated document from his clipboard. It had a fake Johnson County seal and a half-legible signature. I'd seen better forgeries in high school art class. "You got a permit number for this?" I asked. "No need." "It's HOA authorized." That was all I needed. I took out my phone, started filming, and told them to leave. When they didn't move, I called the sheriff. While I was on the line, I noticed something strange. The workers weren't digging toward the road or for any kind of channel. They were focused near the edge of the pond, where my dad and I had reinforced the bank years ago with limestone and native brush. They were tearing it apart piece by piece. By the time the sheriff's deputy arrived, the crew had already carved a small trench and jammed a PVC pipe toward the water line. I showed the deputy the footage, the fake document, and the damage. He wasn't thrilled to be involved, probably thought this was another neighborly dispute, but he agreed the crew had no legal standing. They left with grumbles and dirty looks, but not before tossing the fake permit in my general direction. That night, I installed motion detectors near the pond, refastened the camera system, and dug up every property map I had. Grandpa helped me overlay old cadastral charts with the new satellite prints. Every inch of my land was where it always had been, untouched, unclaimed by anyone but the coal fields. No easements, no right-of-way, and certainly no drainage agreement with the HOA. But Karen wasn't done. The next morning, just after sunrise, a drone buzzed over the vineyard like a hornet with a grudge. It wasn't one of mine. I've got two, and they're programmed to stay inside my perimeter. This one was high-end, smooth, fast. It zipped low over the grape rows, looped twice over the barn, then hovered creepily above the house. I could see the damn thing from my bedroom window. Red light blinking. Camera pointed straight at me. I grabbed my old Mossberg from the wall rack and stepped out onto the porch. The drone dipped, then steadied again, like it was taunting me. I warned it once, then I blew it out of the sky. It dropped like a shot bird, crashed into the dirt beside the chicken coop, and burst into a satisfying spark. Metal, plastic, and a whole lot of Karen's money. Fried. An hour later, I had a knock on the door. 2 deputies. One of them was the same guy who'd come for the trenching crew. "Mr. Coalfield," he said, polite but weary. "We got a report of property destruction. Seems someone's drone was shot down on or near your land." I explained the situation, showed them my footage, pointed to where it fell, well within my boundary lines. The other deputy asked if I knew who the drone belonged to. "Probably Karen's spawn," I said. "He's the only idiot in HOA territory who thinks he's a licensed aerial surveyor." Sure enough, 20 minutes later, I got a cease and desist letter shoved under my gate. It was from the HOA attorney, some hack from a strip mall firm in Fort Worth, accusing me of destroying community equipment and threatening civil action. Grandpa looked it over, snorted, and handed it back. "They're bluffing," he said. "But let's play ball." We filed a counterclaim the next day. Grandpa drafted it himself. Violation of FAA drone regulations, unlawful surveillance, trespassing, and harassment. We added high-res footage from my security system and exact GPS telemetry, proving the drone was well below the legal altitude for private drones and within 50 feet of my bedroom window. The judge tossed their claim immediately. But the real surprise came when the FAA regional office responded to our report. Turns out Karen's son, Todd Criswell, had no license for commercial drone use and had already been flagged once before for flying over a livestock operation. That got him a fine. And the HOA? They got a warning. Any further violations and their board would face a formal investigation for privacy infringement. When the letter hit their inbox, I swear I could hear Karen screaming all the way from her cul-de-sac. Things were heating up. They'd tried paper. They'd tried pressure. Now they were trying sabotage and tech. They were running out of moves, and I was just getting warmed up. Things calmed down for a few days after the drone incident, but I knew better than to think it was over. Karen wasn't just aggressive, she was methodical. So was I, especially with Grandpa around. We decided it was time to stop reacting and start digging. Not dirt, paperwork. And when it comes to scandal, it's never what's built on the land. It's what's buried in the files. Grandpa and I drove down to the Johnson County Clerk's office. He still had some friends there, old court clerks and staff who remembered him from his judge days. With a few quiet handshakes and one very specific barbecue bribe, we got access to years of HOA financial filings, land use plans, and inspection reports. It didn't take long to find the first red flag. An environmental violation report filed against my property, dated one day before the first HOA offer letter. Same inspector, same file number, but the signature looked off. Grandpa leaned closer. "This ain't the county seal. It's a stamp." We requested the original file from the Environmental Compliance Division. When it arrived, the official version showed no violations. The one the HOA sent out was an altered copy, forged, sloppily. Then came the real break. In the HOA's own board meeting notes, which they're legally required to keep, we found an entry marked Discretionary Fund Allocation Compliance Encouragement. That fund had been moved to a separate bank account and was being spent without invoices. When we traced it, it led straight to someone named Arthur Blinn, listed as consultant. I knew that name. He was the so-called environmental inspector who claimed my pond was leaking chemical runoff. We kept pulling. Arthur wasn't just a consultant. He'd been a guest speaker at HOA meetings, always after new properties were being integrated. Karen had used HOA funds to pay him, not to inspect, but to fabricate reports. It was worse than that. Emails surfaced between Karen and Arthur discussing how to make the Coalfield property look high risk. She even asked if an anonymous tip could trigger a fire inspection. We compiled everything: emails, screenshots, financial logs. We packaged it all into a formal complaint and handed it to the Johnson County District Attorney's Office. They didn't blink. By the next morning, investigators were knocking on Arthur's door. He cracked fast, offered names, dates, payments. Karen was now officially under investigation for fraudulent use of HOA funds, bribery of a county contractor, falsification of public documents, conspiracy to interfere with property ownership. The local news caught wind of it. Not from us, of course. But suddenly, the HOA forum lit up with panicked threads and half-deleted posts. Residents were asking questions. Some were furious. Karen stayed quiet, for now. But the walls were closing in. I didn't hear from Karen for almost a week after the complaint was filed. That silence alone told me things were unraveling on her end. When people like her stop barking, it's usually because the leash just got yanked. But the reckoning came faster than even I expected. It was a Thursday evening when Grandpa and I got word that Karen had called an emergency HOA board meeting. No agenda posted, no minutes announced. Just a message circulated to core members of Clear Sky Estates about a critical community strategy session. That was our cue. We arrived just as the meeting was starting. It was being held in their new HOA community hall, which, ironically, was built using funds Karen had moved from the discretionary account now under investigation. Fitting. I walked in first, heads turned. A few whispered. Karen was already at the front, speaking rapidly to the board, flipping through slides on a cheap projector. Most of them were confused. She was explaining something about reclaiming unused land for environmental rehabilitation and reallocation of public land for public good. Then she showed a map. Right in the middle of it, Coalfield Acres. My land, highlighted in green, labeled Phase 2 Community Expansion Zone. I stepped forward. "That's my property, Karen." She paused, swallowed hard. "It's a proposed planning model." Nothing finalized, Grandpa pushed in behind me and dropped a thick binder on the table in front of her. That's the final word. It was a full printed copy of the 1969 County Charter Agreement, signed, notarized, and with a certified clause exempting Coalfield Acres from any and all HOA jurisdiction permanently. We'd gotten a fresh copy from the county clerk, just in case someone misplaced the originals. The room went silent. Karen tried to spin it. "Well, we believe the recent changes in zoning doesn't override a legal exemption," Grandpa cut in, "and your environmental justification, based on fraud, which we've already submitted to the DA's office, along with proof of fund misappropriation. Your days of strong-arming retirees and first-time homeowners are over." She opened her mouth again, but the door burst open before she could speak. 2 county investigators stepped in, followed by a uniformed deputy. "Karen Criswell," one of them said. Everyone watched as she was handcuffed right there, in front of her board, her maps, her lies. She barely protested. The smugness was gone. Her lawyer wasn't even present. The list of charges they read off was longer than a cattle inventory: wire fraud, conspiracy, falsification of municipal records, misuse of HOA funds, attempted unlawful land acquisition, and bribery of a licensed inspector. The board sat frozen. One woman quietly took off her HOA badge and placed it on the table. As they led Karen out, Grandpa turned to the crowd. "If any of you were pressured, threatened, or manipulated, now's your chance to speak. The state will be listening. And so will I outside." The local news crew was already setting up. By morning, every news station in Johnson County was running the footage. HOA president arrested in land fraud scandal. They called it the Coalfield Sting. I called it justice. But there was still one chapter left to write. The morning after Karen's arrest, I woke up to the sound of Grandpa brewing coffee. It wasn't just any coffee. It was that same strong, bitter brew he used to make when I was a kid visiting the farm during summer, the kind that meant we had work to do. Except today, the work was done. We sat on the porch, both of us in silence for a while. The sun was rising over the east pasture, and for the first time in months, there weren't any drones buzzing, no uninvited surveyors wandering the perimeter, and no goddamn HOA forms taped to my mailbox. "Still think engineering in Austin was stressful?" Grandpa finally asked, sipping his cup like he hadn't just publicly humiliated a woman into federal custody less than 24 hours ago. Honestly, I grinned. I'd rather wrangle 1,000 lines of code than deal with one Karen. The legal aftermath moved fast. Karen was denied bail due to the risk of tampering with witnesses. Apparently, she had already tried to delete board meeting records from her laptop. Her accountant rolled over almost immediately, trading testimony for immunity. And Arthur Blinn, the so-called inspector, was now facing his own set of charges from the State Environmental Board. The Clear Sky Estates HOA didn't last long without her. After a flood of lawsuits from angry residents who'd been misled, charged illegal fines, or threatened with foreclosure, the board dissolved. The remaining members voted unanimously to disband the HOA entirely and transfer financial oversight to a neutral third-party auditor. They even issued a public apology. To me. On the front page of the Johnson County Ledger, Grandpa had it framed. But the best part? The farm. Coalfield Acres was back to what it was meant to be. A living, breathing piece of family history. We put up new fencing, restored the barn doors, and cleaned up the old vineyard with help from a few neighbors who'd quietly rooted for us the whole time. I started bottling the muscadine wine again. Small batches. Just enough for friends, family, and the occasional nosy journalist. And the sign. That massive wooden sign Grandpa and I carved by hand, bolted right into the front gate. It reads, 80 years on our land, and never in an HOA. People stop to take pictures now. Some locals even bring their kids out to show them the farm that stood up. I've had offers, big ones, from developers, boutique hotel groups, even a film crew. I turned every one of them down. Because this land isn't just dirt and timber, it's a legacy, a memory, a damn line in the sand. As for Grandpa, he sits out front most mornings now, a weathered Colt tucked under the porch table, sipping that bitter coffee like a gunslinger waiting for the next idiot to come knocking. "You see anyone with a clipboard," he tells me, "you shoot first and ask for credentials later." I laugh, but I know he's only half joking. Truth is, I learned more from this fight than I ever did in college. About law, about people, about standing your ground, even when the odds are stacked. Especially then, because the moment you sell your history for convenience, you stop being the owner of your land and start being a tenant of someone else's empire. And out here, we don't do empires, we do roots, we do resistance, and we damn sure do legacy.